Mo Hua, a 10-year-old boy in a simple outer gate disciple's Taoist robe, squatted behind a huge rock at the mountain's base, idly holding a blade of grass as he focused on drawing detailed patterns on the ground. A chubby boy wearing the standard outer gate robe and a costly jade pendant, with 2 or 3 attendants, noticed Mo Hua happily drawing behind the rock. After making sure no instructors were nearby, he shyly called Mo Hua's name. Mo Hua looked up, showing his delicate, handsome face and clear eyes. The chubby boy lowered his voice to ask if the work was done. Mo Hua confidently assured him and pulled several formation diagrams from his bag, handing them over to inspect. Mo Hua patiently explained the assignment was basic formation patterns of the 5 elements formation and that he had purposely added 6 errors to keep the instructor from suspecting the diagrams weren't his own work. He worried doing too well might raise suspicion and bring harsh punishment from his father. Mo Hua nodded, praising his insight. The chubby boy then gave Mo Hua 2 spirit stones, promising to return with more formation homework. Mo Hua carefully pocketed the spirit stones, picked another blade of grass, and resumed drawing on the ground. Soon after, a lean youth carrying a gold-speckled paper fan approached. With a sour look and wearing even more jade pendants, he accepted a set of formation diagrams from Mo Hua. After glancing at them, he signaled his servant to collect the diagrams and handed 2 spirit stones to Mo Hua. He lacked time for basic patterns, so he had Mo Hua ghostwrite them. Mo Hua ignored him and kept drawing, citing rumors that Mo Hua was the best among Tongxian Gate's cheer-refining disciples. Mo Hua questioned the young master's arrogance, since he'd just asked Mo Hua to do his homework, but outwardly flattered him by praising the Chen family's prestigious formation legacy. Mo Hua replied vaguely, saying there were a few but didn't name anyone. The young master got angry, accusing Mo Hua of implying he was inferior. Mo Hua explained that no matter how talented cultivators were, once they mastered their skills, they still served the Chen family by refining artifacts, making pills, and drawing formations. He noted that the young master, though only at the cheer-refining stage, had foundation establishment cultivators under him and was a first-rank formation master commanding second-rank masters, a sign of great prestige. After seeing him off, Mo Hua resumed practicing formations on the ground using grassroots. Soon, several wealthy cultivators arrived, trading spirit stones for Mo Hua's handwritten formation diagrams. By the time he finished, Mo Hua had earned 12 spirit stones. Though 12 spirit stones were not insignificant for loose cultivators, it wasn't enough for serious cultivation. Mo Hua sighed quietly, a hint of helplessness on his young face. For bottom-tier cultivators, cultivating the Tao offered no hope. The cheer-refining realm was insignificant under the vast heavenly Tao, and Mo Hua was one of countless ants, likely to remain so. Mo Hua's young face showed bitterness. Though the heavenly Tao might be equal, cultivation was not. Mo Hua was a loose cultivator at the 2nd level of Qi refinement, born into a family of Qi-refining cultivators. His father, Mo Shan, earned a living hunting monster beasts, enduring deadly battles and scars. His mother worked in the food building, cooking by the stove, often suffering from lung pain and a dry cough due to the heat. His frugal parents saved all their spirit stones so Mo Hua could cultivate at the outer gate of Tongxian Gate. Despite his efforts, Mo Hua's mediocre spiritual root, only slightly better than average, doomed him to remain ordinary in a world full of geniuses. No matter how much he cultivated, he might never advance beyond Qi refinement. With a tough family situation and no spirit stones, Mo Hua could only train up to the 6th level of Qi refinement before leaving the sect to learn a craft for a living. However, Mo Hua was naturally frail. Jobs like artifact refining and monster hunting required strong bodies, and his weak health might stop him from even finding simple work. If he married and had kids, the burden would grow heavier, using all spirit stones to support his family. Without spirit stones to cultivate, Mo Hua's progress would stall forever, leaving him a Qi-refining cultivator for life like all the poor loose cultivators in Tongxian City and countless low-level cultivators in the cultivation world. At 10 years old, Mo Hua sighed, adjusted his mindset, and went to the sect for classes. After a day of cultivation, he returned to the disciples' residence, briefly read Tao cultivation canons, and lay down at 1 p.m. As soon as Mo Hua closed his eyes, a broken stele appeared in his sea of consciousness. Though it had no inscriptions, Mo Hua instinctively knew its name, the Taoist Stele. Since gaining the power to record events, the Taoist Stele had appeared in Mo Hua's sea of consciousness, with vague, nearly intangible memories. In those memories, Mo Hua had lived a short life in another world without spiritual energy. His family was ordinary, but he studied hard, went to university for fine arts, enjoyed researching traditional Chinese painting and calligraphy, then worked as a graphic designer at a big company, dying from overwork in his 20s. His life was full of stress and anxiety, with no real meaning. No filial piety, no ideals, no dreams, no love. These memories blurred, and sometimes Mo Hua couldn't tell what was real, like Zhuangzi dreaming of a butterfly or the butterfly dreaming of Zhuangzi. Over time, Mo Hua stopped worrying about it. The past was past. Now he was 10, living in the Tao cultivation world as a cultivator who could fully grasp the heavenly Tao, soar across the 9 states, pluck the sun and moon, and bury stars with a clasp, or remain a cultivator who spent his life refining qi, barely able to use a few spells and living humbly. Without the Taoist Stele, Mo Hua believed he'd likely be the latter. The Taoist Stele hovered in the center of Mo Hua's sea of consciousness. Broad and rustic, oddly shaped and incomplete, it seemed empty yet radiated a vast, mysterious aura, silent as the void. On its fleeting surface, formation diagrams could be drawn, each strengthening Mo Hua's divine sense. Painting a formation linked to the heavenly Tao's mystery in the sea of consciousness and consumed vast divine sense. When Mo Hua painted formations on the Taoist Stele, his divine sense drained, but erasing the formation restored it instantly. This cycle of existence and non-existence was deeply mysterious. Each time Mo Hua painted a formation, his divine sense grew slightly but surely, so even small gains were valuable. By repeatedly painting formations on the Taoist Stele, Mo Hua improved his skills and steadily increased his divine sense. With strong divine sense, he could learn higher-level, more powerful formations. One day, he might become a great formation master. Once Mo Hua became a formation master and mastered profound formations, he'd have a solid foundation to advance beyond a mere qi refinement cultivator. However, becoming a formation master was extremely difficult. Formations were hard to learn, and mastery even harder. For a qi refinement realm cultivator, becoming a first-rank formation master was like ascending to the heavens in one step. That night, Mo Hua lay in bed, but his divine sense sank into his sea of consciousness, endlessly drawing formations on the Taoist Stele. He was drawing the twin yuan formation made of 2 formation patterns, a basic formation. But Mo Hua had never successfully drawn it before. Mo Hua was very familiar with single formation patterns, drawing them easily and skillfully. Wanting to learn harder formations, he practiced the twin yuan formation with 2 patterns every night on the Taoist Stele. After many nights of effort, he finally succeeded. Since Mo Hua could draw 2 patterns, his divine sense and skill surpassed his peers. Among early-stage qi refinement disciples at Tongxian Gate's outer gate, he was unmatched in formations. Mo Hua sighed in relief. At 6 a.m., his divine sense left his sea of consciousness, and he opened his eyes. Though he'd drawn formations all night, his divine sense was clear and he felt rested, like after a good sleep. He opened the window, and morning sunlight lit his fair, handsome face. The 10-year-old Mo Hua took a deep breath, staring at the horizon with determination. As long as he kept practicing and refining his divine sense, he would become a first-rank formation master. When that day came, he'd take a great step in seeking the Tao and understanding the great Tao. He wouldn't spend his life stuck in qi refinement. At 6 a.m., Mo Hua rose and began his cultivation. An hour later, his practice ended, and he went to class to wait for his instructor. especially with dominant great sects nearby. None of this concerned Mo Hua. He was just a Class C outer gate disciple at Tongxian Gate, neither inner gate nor direct disciple. Even if he wanted to be hunted, no one would bother. Mo Hua hoped to join the inner gate but lacked spirit stones and connections, making it unlikely this lifetime, let alone becoming a direct disciple. Mo Hua calmed his mind and focused his energy, sitting quietly until Instructor Yen entered with a serious look. Instructor Yen treated everyone equally, correcting mistakes without damaging anyone's dignity. Because of this, the disciples both respected and feared him. Today was the last day of Tongxian Gate's annual cultivation, followed by a break of over 2 weeks. Assessment results for the disciples' courses would also be released today. Instructor Yen held a stack of report cards, and the disciples grew nervous. Though usually indifferent, Mo Hua felt uneasy seeing others tense. Soon, he received his own results. His formation assessment was Class A, his strongest subject. Few at Tongxian Gate earned Class A in formations, and he was one of them. His cultivation was Class B, not from lack of effort but limited potential. He had a medium-grade small 5-element spiritual root. Compared to others, his achievements were modest. For other subjects like Taoist calendar history and Qi refinement, he mostly earned Class A grades. But for spirit stone-dependent subjects like alchemy and rune-making, he scored Class B or C. Coming from a poor family, Mo Hua couldn't borrow a pill furnace and relied on intuition during tests, making his success unstable and largely luck-based. Overall, his grades were good. Mastering formations is tough, and earning Class A was impressive. Instructor Yen spoke briefly before stepping away. The students whispered, comparing grades. One admired Mo Hua's repeated Class A in formations. The disciples gathered around Mo Hua until a Chen family disciple in a silver-white robe snorted disdainfully, mocking the achievement as just drawing simple sect formations. When asked about his own grade, the Chen family disciple refused to say. Another disciple peeked and laughed, revealing he had earned a grade C. The group laughed at his nerve to mock someone with an A. The Chen family disciple grew angry, claiming no formation master came from loose cultivators and none ever would, insisting their lack of inheritance made it impossible. The crowd fell silent. Mo Hua thought the Chen family disciple foolish, then stood and bowed respectfully behind him, greeting Instructor Yen. The Chen family disciple stiffened, turning to see Instructor Yen behind him, face pale. Instructor Yen scolded him, saying the sect was for learning and cultivating the Tao, not belittling peers, and criticized his poor formation studies. He ordered the disciple to stand outside until dark as punishment and to draw the basic 5 elements formation patterns 100 times for next year. Warning failure meant he should not return. The disciple's face paled, but he said nothing. Instructor Yan's authority was enough to discipline even a direct Chen family descendant, let alone a distant relative like him. The disciple slunk away to his punishment. Instructor Yen stood before Mo Hua, paused, then patted his slender shoulders, advising him to ignore others' opinions and focus on his studies. Mo Hua bowed respectfully and promised to remember the advice. The disciples held back their excitement, thanked the instructors, and dispersed like birds and beasts. The year-end break brought joy to the disciples, but Mo Hua felt a complex mix of emotions. He knew most young Qi refinement realm disciples couldn't understand the hardships of cultivation life. Thinking of his father's injury-ridden body from hunting monsters and his mother's worn appearance, Mo Hua felt a sour ache and sighed quietly. Though becoming a first-grade formation master was still a distant dream, he wished to give his parents a better life within his means. After packing his scorecard and holding 12 spirit stones, Mo Hua didn't go home through Tongxian Gate but walked toward Market Town instead. Mo Hua went straight to a small stall at the street's end, where the owner, an elder named Sun, known as Old Sun, was selling wares. Old Sun's son worked as a minor manager at Myriad Treasure Building and sometimes brought defective goods discarded by the building to sell cheaply. Old Sun looked up and saw Mo Hua panting as he ran up, his flushed face prompting a teasing remark about whether Mo Hua planned to buy this time instead of just looking. Mo Hua waved his hand and said he was here to buy. Old Sun asked if Mo Hua's family had given him New Year's money early. But Mo Hua replied with displeasure that he earned it himself, patting the pocket where the spirit stones clinked. Old Sun brightened and assured Mo Hua he had high-quality pills, formations, and artifacts at low prices, all from myriad treasure-building stock, and asked what Mo Hua wanted to buy. Mo Hua asked if Old Sun had any fire-resistant spiritual artifacts. Old Sun nodded knowingly, pulled out a burlap bag, and spread it before Mo Hua. Mo Hua was surprised by Old Sun's preparation and examined the artifacts, which included rings, jade pendants, lanterns, a net, and a scarf, the most complete set in Market Town. He picked up a simple yet exquisite hairpin and asked what it was. Mo Hua doubted that standard spiritual weapons from myriad treasure building sold in the market could be flawless. It was classified as defective but still fully functional. Mo Hua nodded, liked the hairpin, and asked the price. Old Sun said 15 spirit stones. Mo Hua bargained down to 5, surprising Old Sun, who commented on declining morals. After some haggling, they agreed on 10 spirit stones. Old Sun took the money, wrapped the hairpin in a simple but neat paper box, and handed it to Mo Hua, muttering about his slow grandson who wasn't as clever. Mo Hua, pleased, waved goodbye and left happily. A nearby vendor laughed, saying Old Sun was losing money, but Old Sun replied he was just earning less. The vendor asked who the child was buying the hairpin for. Old Sun said it was to avoid the stove's heat. Watching Mo Hua walk away, Old Sun sighed softly and called him a good kid. Mo Hua's home was on a quiet street at Tongxian City's edge, an old but adequate house for 3. As evening fell, cooking smoke rose and faint yellow lights glowed. Mo Hua ran inside, calling out that he was home. A plainly dressed woman with a gentle look came from the inner room, her eyes bright with joy as she pulled Missouri Hua close, stroked his head, pinched his cheeks, and asked if he'd lost weight from hard cultivation. Mo Hua said no, then showed her the box, saying it was for her. The woman, Lu Ruhua, Mo Hua's mother and a Qi refinement realm loose cultivator, opened the box to find the hairpin. Mo Hua explained it was a fire-resistant hairpin to protect her from the heat of long hours in the restaurant kitchen, which harmed her health, and that the hairpin would keep her much cooler. Sect fees and cultivation materials. Lu Ruhua was skilled at cooking and helped in a small city restaurant kitchen. When Lu Ruhua helped in the kitchen, she sometimes used her spiritual power to create fire. Though she earned only about 30 spirit stones a month and it hurt her health, this job was desirable and rare among Qi refinement cultivators. Holding the hairpin, Lu Ruhua pursed her lips quietly. Mo Hua quickly explained he earned the spirit stones by helping a sect member and hadn't stolen or cheated. Lu Ruhua smiled warmly but hesitated to accept the gift, reminding Mo Hua he was still young and would need spirit stones for cultivation. They should save whenever possible. Mo Hua confidently said the future was uncertain, and he might become a great cultivator with a golden core and nascent soul, able to get as many spirit stones as he wanted. Lu Ruhua laughed and tapped Mo Hua's forehead, teasing him for already learning to boast at such a young age. Mo Hua insisted she keep the hairpin, saying he had bargained for half a day to buy it and refusing it would waste his effort. After pinning the hairpin in her hair, he ran inside for a mirror to show her how elegant and dignified it looked. Seeing his eager eyes, Lu Ruhua softened and agreed to keep the hairpin but warned against accepting gifts in the future. Mo Hua agreed repeatedly and asked if dinner was ready. Lu Ruhua said it was with all his favorite dishes. She was an excellent cook. Though her vegetarian meals lacked spiritual energy, they were exquisite and delicious. After eating and chatting, Mo Hua returned to his room to read. After 1 p.m., Mo Hua entered his sea of consciousness and practiced formations on a stele all night. He woke at 6 a.m. He closed his eyes to meditate, holding a spirit stone in his hand to cultivate. As sunlight brightened the room, Mo Hua stretched to rise when he heard heavy footsteps outside. Peeking through a door crack, Mo Hua saw a blood-stained, haggard man enter. It was his father, Emo-shan. Emo-shan was an 8th-level Chi refinement monster hunter who earned a living hunting monster beasts and gathering their materials. Though impressive, the work was tough and dangerous. Most monster beasts were far stronger than human cultivators. Teams of 5 to 10 cultivators of the same realm usually hunted together, but success wasn't guaranteed. Even when they killed a beast, valuable parts were often damaged, lowering their sale value. Profits were split by contribution, leaving modest shares. Injuries meant costly treatments, and serious wounds could end a career. Emo-shan was tall and sturdy, practicing body cultivation. His sharp, distinct features showed signs of hardship from years of hunting and exposure. He set down his knife and the hide of an unknown monster beast he'd carried on his shoulder, finally exhaling in relief. His outer garment was worn, torn, and stained with fresh and dried blood, likely from beasts and possibly himself or companions. Emo-hwa guessed the hunt had been tough. Emo-shan's furrowed brows and grave look, with bloodstains, made him appear forbidding. Yet his demeanor softened seeing his wife, like a war-weary general returning home and shedding armor. His voice hoarse from fatigue, Emo-shan gently asked if everything was all right at home. Lu Ruhua began tidying his gear and reached for a clean towel to wipe his face, assuring him all was well. Noticing dust and weariness on his face, she urged him to take care while hunting. Emo-shan smiled and asked if Emo-hwa had returned. Lu Ruhua said he came back just yesterday and was likely still sleeping during the sect's New Year break. She offered to call him, knowing he'd be happy to see his father. Noticing blood on Emo-shan's clothes and wounds, he stopped her, saying to let Emo-hwa sleep longer since cultivation was demanding. Emo-shan planned to bathe, apply herbal medicine, and change out of his blood-stained clothes. Lu Ruhua nodded and suggested he eat first. Having traveled all night, Emo-shan was ravenous. Though simple, Lu Ruhua's cooking was excellent, and he ate eagerly. During hunts, he often slept outdoors and survived on cold rations, sparingly using fasting pills. Eating his wife's meal at home, he felt his hardships and fatigue fade away. After a hearty meal and a big swallow of fragrant, sticky congee, Emo-shan sighed deeply. Lu Ruhua saw the blood on his clothes and asked if someone had been hurt again. Emo-shan confirmed 3 were injured, and Old Chu was critically wounded. He recounted the hunt. Their group of 8 chased a wolf demon over 3 feet tall. They cornered it, planning to slowly drain its demonic power before the final strike. Unexpectedly, another monster hunting team, mostly inexperienced rookies, passed by and boldly tried to join. 2 rookies were eaten alive by the beast. After feeding on humans to regain blood chi, the wolf demon went berserk. Emo-shan and Old Chu used all their spiritual power to finally kill it, but at a great cost. Emo-shan bitterly added that Old Chu had a 2-year-old child and a wife who grew vegetables and fruits to help support them. It was uncertain how the 3 of them would survive. Lu Ruhua sighed and suggested that since Old Chu had lent them spirit stones before despite not being wealthy, they still had some saved and should give them to Old Chu for his treatment. Emo-shan agreed, noting the wolf demon's corpse hadn't been sold yet and should fetch about 300 spirit stones. He proposed giving Old Chu a larger share and lending him more to get through the crisis. However, Emo-shan admitted he had hoped that after killing the wolf demon, they would have nearly enough spirit stones for War's entry into the sect for cultivation next year. But now that was uncertain. Lu Ruhua took Emo-shan's hand and reassured him that as long as the family was safe, they'd find ways to earn spirit stones. She said she'd saved some from working in the tavern's kitchen and could borrow more, so it wouldn't affect War's studies next year. Emo-shan looked at his wife, seeing the exhaustion on her once youthful face and feeling remorseful. He told her not to work in the kitchen anymore, explaining the heat harms the heart and lungs and can damage the meridians. He promised to find better monster hunters next year, kill more beasts, and earn more spirit stones so she wouldn't suffer so much. Lu Ruhua smiled proudly and pointed to a hairpin on her head. Emo-shan, who hadn't noticed it before, realized it was different. She explained where gave it to her, calling it a fire-resistant hairpin that wards off stove heat, cooling her heart, lungs, and meridians. Mo Shan felt relieved and ashamed, admitting it had been years since he gave her a gift. Lu Ruhua smiled and said since War was his son, his gift was as good as his. Mo Shan laughed ruefully, reflecting that cultivators often speak of fate. Maybe his fortune was marrying Lu Ruhua and having a sensible son like War. Lu Ruhua laughed playfully in response. Watching her smile, Mo Shan vowed to find better hunters and a way into the inner mountain next year to hunt more monsters. He aimed to earn more spirit stones and ease his wife's burden, securing a better future for their son. Inside, Mo Hua overheard his parents talk and sighed quietly, realizing they had always endured the hardships of cultivation life without him knowing. He understood that cultivators also had to work hard for spirit stones and survival, not so different from mortals. Mo Hua wondered if there was a way for him to earn spirit stones too. After some thought, and once Mo Shan changed into casual clothes, Mo Hua pretended ignorance and cheerfully left the house. The family of 3 was eating. Mo Shan had finished, so Mo Hua began sharing stories from monster hunts. Mo Shan told tales of one-eyed wolves, 2-headed tigers, and 3-legged wild boars. He recalled a team that killed a mature monster but forgot to take the demon core, only grabbing worthless fur. When they returned for the core, it was gone. The leader regretted it so much he vomited blood and fainted. Another hunter caught a beast with an ancient bloodline, sold to a great sect for a high price, ensuring he no longer worried about food or clothes, though no one knew when he would vanish. Mo Hua listened eagerly, realizing these stories were full of blood, danger, and cruelty. Details his father left out. Parents never wanted their children to know such harsh truths, hoping for a pure, happy childhood. As Mo Hua finished, 3 little heads peeked from the gate, eyes fixed on the house. Seeing Mo Shan and Lu Ruhua home, the children lined up and greeted them as Uncle Mo and Aunt Lu. The 3 Meng children lived on the same street, from families who also hunted monsters. The Meng elders were friends with Mo Shan and lived nearby, so Mo Hua grew up playing with their kids. Their names, by birth order, were Meng Dahu, Meng Shuanghu, and Meng Xiaohu. Among Tongxian City's monsters, tigers were strongest, so naming the kids with Hu, meaning tiger, was a wish for strength and honor. The kids lived up to their names, strong and lively like little tigers. Mo Hua was the youngest and had been sickly since birth. Mo Shan doubted he'd grow tiger-like, noting his delicate, fair features resembled a porcelain doll. He took a character from Lu Ruhua's name to call him Mo Hua. Seeing the kids, Lu Ruhua gave each a bun. Though they said no at first, their hands reached out, grabbing the buns and stuffing them in. Cheeks puffed as they thanked her. Lu Ruhua's cooking was the best around, and the kids envied Mo Hua. Mo Shan waved them off to play but reminded them to return for lunch. Mo Hua and the kids nodded and ran out. Among the Meng kids, Dahu was honest, Shuanghu clever, and Xiaohu talkative. All older and taller, they usually led Mo Hua in games. As they walked, they chatted nonstop about dragon dance spots, fireworks, crowds, and lively girls who could dance. But they talked so much they forgot where to go. Finally, the children agreed. Adults choose for adults, kids want everything, so they'd visit every place. Spiritual cultivators cast flashy but mostly useless spells, amazing and envying the children. Dahu, Shuanghu, and Xiaohu had a blast, finding everything fresh and exciting. Mo Hua played but also watched for chances to earn spirit stones on the street. After looking around, Mo Hua saw most ways to earn spirit stones were taken or beyond his skill. He watched cultivators perform loudly for attention, sighing at how hard it was to make a living. Shuanghu noticed Mo Hua's mood and asked if something was wrong. Dahu quickly offered to confront anyone bullying Mo Hua, with Xiaohu eager to help. Taught by Meng family elders to protect Mo Hua and supported by Lu Ruhua's cooking, the 3 kids felt a strong sense of justice and were ready to defend him. Mo Hua, known as the smartest loose cultivator, often helped others with homework, strengthening their bond. Seeing them ready to fight, Mo Hua smiled and said no one was bullying him. He was just thinking about earning spirit stones. Dahu and the others admitted they didn't know how to make spirit stones either. Mo Hua asked if they knew how a formation master earned them. Dahu said the assessment to become a formation master was tough, and their neighborhood had no first-ranked masters. Xiaohu added that even in Tongxian City, few passed the formation master test. He mentioned an uncle from the Meng family who studied formations for 20 years without becoming first-ranked. Shuanghu said the uncle was just an apprentice seeking a mentor but wasn't accepted because he couldn't answer questions. She explained the ranks: apprentice, ordinary formation master, and first-ranked formation master, noting the uncle was far from qualifying. Mo Hua asked how he made a living. Shuanghu said he drew simple formations for businesses to earn spirit stones, which he used to buy ink and brushes to practice more. Though he failed to find a mentor, he kept this cycle going. Mo Hua thought about this and knew his weak health made becoming a monster hunter unlikely, so he needed another way to earn. He planned to try earning spirit stones first and promised to treat the others to pastries if he succeeded. The kids cheered. They wandered longer, saw everything except a charming young girl, then went home satisfied for lunch. Afterward, Mo Hua told his parents he was going out and headed alone to North Main Street in Tongxian City. Mo Hua, lacking spirit stones, didn't plan to buy but walked the street, checking each shop. He entered a modest, slightly shabby shop with formations hanging outside and few customers. A pale, well-fed middle-aged cultivator sat behind a tall counter, likely the steward. A bell rang sharply as Mo Hua entered. Half dozing, the steward looked up surprised to see a small head over the counter and asked where Mo Hua's parents were. Mo Hua shook his head, saying he came alone. The steward asked why he was looking for him. Mo Hua asked if they needed help drawing formations. The steward laughed and listed requirements: at least 6th level Qi refinement, a sect's educational jade slip, being a formation apprentice under a formation master, and paying a deposit. Mo Hua realized he met none. He admitted he wasn't skilled and was there for his brother. The steward asked what his brother did. Mo Hua said his brother was a formation apprentice helping the shop with basic formation painting to earn money for ink and paper, but was too busy to run errands, so Mo Hua was assisting him. Mo Hua borrowed the identity of an uncle from the extended Meng family. The steward stroked his chin, hesitated, but declined, saying his brother must come in person to paint formations for the shop. Mo Hua asked if a deposit was required. The steward confirmed it was. Mo Hua argued the deposit covered the formation map and materials, so even if he deceived them, it would be like selling formations and materials at cost, no profit, no loss. The steward hesitated, and Mo Hua asked if business was slow. Though not admitting it, the steward's shop had few customers and even fewer formation masters or apprentices willing to paint, explaining the quiet atmosphere. Seizing the chance, Mo Hua praised his brother's skill, saying in a few years he'd be a formation master, and with more study, possibly a first-grade master, able to paint advanced formations and bring profit to the shop. The steward scoffed inwardly but admitted rules were mostly for show. Producing formations was what mattered. He agreed but demanded proof of the brother's skill. Since Mo Hua was just a child and knew little about formations, he suggested Mo Hua bring a formation his brother had drawn. Mo Hua didn't have his brother's formations but had his own, homework from his sect with deconstructed basic patterns, which would reveal his true identity if shown. After thinking, Mo Hua offered to draw a formation himself to prove his brother's skill. Surprised, the steward agreed and gave him a formation map labeled Bright Fire Formation, a complete, difficult formation with 3 patterns unknown to Mo Hua's sect instructors. Mo Hua confidently claimed the formation was too hard to draw and said if he could, he'd earn spirit stones himself, making his brother unnecessary. Realizing it was wrong to expect a child to draw a full formation, Fatty Steward pointed to the upper left corner and said if Mo Hua could draw that small part, he'd agree to the deal. Mo Hua studied the pattern, a basic Fire Series design with some complex tweaks within his skill. He dipped his brush in ink and quickly traced the pattern on paper. Fatty Steward nodded, impressed by Mo Hua's skilled brushwork and smooth strokes, showing solid training. The pattern was accurate and well done, suggesting family training or good guidance from his brother. Judging by Mo Hua's simple clothes, Fatty Steward guessed it was the latter. Satisfied, Fatty Steward set the deposit at 10 spirit stones and promised to provide the formation maps and materials. Mo Hua was shocked. He only had 3 spirit stones, earned from copying formation homework and mostly spent on a fire-resistant hairpin. He realized he'd have to wait for the sect's formation test to earn more stones by drawing for others. Seeing Mo Hua's worry, Fatty Steward didn't push, knowing it was normal for a child to lack many spirit stones. He reminded Mo Hua that without the deposit, the job couldn't start, but assured him the order would be held for his brother until Mo Hua returned with the stones. Mo Hua nodded eagerly, promising to get the stones from his brother and come back. Fatty Steward waved him off, saying it was still early and he would rest. Mo Hua left the store, squatted on the steps, and thought about his problem. Needing spirit stones to draw formations to earn spirit stones. Feeling dizzy, he thought about asking his parents for help but shook his head, knowing all household expenses required spirit stones. He remembered overhearing his parents say Uncle Chu from the monster hunting team broke his arm and needed to borrow spirit stones for healing, and that Mo Hua's sect tuition for the next term was also due. The family likely had no extra stones. Borrowing wasn't an option since Mo Hua's friends were poorer and had no spirit stones to lend. While deep in thought, a loud shout interrupted him. He looked up to see a well-dressed, chubby boy with attendants glaring angrily at him. It was Xiaofu, eldest son of the Yin family in Tongxian City, nicknamed Xiaopang by sect members because of his plumpness. Though slow and sometimes moody, and Xiaopang wasn't mean and often asked Mo Hua to do his formation homework since he couldn't draw formations himself. And Xiaopang accused Mo Hua of looking down on him because Mo Hua made 6 mistakes in the homework he helped with, while the work he did for skinny Qianxing was perfect. The Qian and Yin families were rivals in Tongxian City, with their younger members equally hostile. Though both lazy and unskilled in Tao cultivation, Qianxing had a worse reputation for arrogance and bullying, while Xiaopang mostly showed off his wealth but stayed in line due to his strict father. Mo Hua reasoned that if Qianxing's formation was perfect, the instructor would notice and punish him, prompting his father's intervention. And Xiaopang doubted this, saying he'd never heard of Qianxing being punished, but Mo Hua explained such punishments were kept secret, and Xiaopang admitted his father never let others know when he was punished. Mo Hua reminded him that his father recently praised him and gave gifts after the instructor gave him a B grade. And Xiaopang quickly forgave Mo Hua and offered to treat him to a meal at his family's spiritual meal building. Mo Hua declined, but Xiaopang insisted, saying his father taught him to repay kindness and refusing would be disrespectful. The stubborn boy persisted, recalling his sore buttocks from his father's beatings as motivation. Mo Hua, tired, asked Xiaopang for a favor instead, to lend him 10 spirit stones. And Xiaopang frowned, revealing he didn't actually have 10 stones because his father limited him to carrying 5. He took out 5 spirit stones, then asked a nearby servant boy to add his stones to reach 10. The servant reluctantly agreed, and Xiaopang gave Mo Hua the 10 spirit stones without asking for repayment, but Mo Hua promised to return them soon. After parting ways, Mo Hua returned to the empty formation pavilion where the manager was dozing. He tiptoed to the counter and placed the 10 spirit stones on it. The manager woke, noticed Mo Hua and the stones, checked their quality, nodded, and pulled out a storage bag from under the counter. The manager explained the bag held a formation diagram for the bright fire formation, plus 10 pieces of formation paper and spiritual ink, enough to draw 10 bright fire formations. The order had a 10-day deadline, after which the deposit would be lost. For each well-drawn formation, Mo Hua would earn 1 spirit stone, but mistakes or poor work would cost 1 spirit stone each. These were standard commerce firm rules, which Mo Hua's brother should know. Mo Hua nodded in understanding. If Mo Hua completed all formations successfully, he'd earn 10 spirit stones. Failing all meant reimbursing 10 stones. Succeeding on more than half would be profitable. The manager reminded him the deadline was 10 days and warned that missing it meant losing the entire deposit. Mo Hua nodded quickly, thanked the manager respectfully, and left. At home, Mo Hua locked himself in his room and studied the bright fire formation diagram spread before him. Many concepts were new to Mo Hua, making it hard to understand. This was his first official formation explanation. His prior sect training involved only basic formation work with 1 or 2 simple patterns for beginners. What caught Mo Hua's eye was a small red handwritten warning that those below the required level should beware of weak divine sense. Mo Hua, only at the second chi refinement layer, frowned. He knew divine sense was vital for all cultivation tasks, like guiding spiritual energy, casting spells, and controlling spiritual artifacts, as well as alchemy and artifact refining, withdrawing formations using the most divine sense. The red warning suggested the divine sense needed here was far greater than he expected. Mo Hua wondered if drawing formations really demanded so much divine sense. He decided to first study the formation patterns, then practice them on the Taoist Stele that night. After copying the formation diagram, having dinner with his parents, and practicing on paper several times, Mo Hua lay down at 1 a.m. and closed his eyes. An ancient, void Taoist stele appeared in his sea of consciousness. In his sea of consciousness, Mo Hua's phantom, identical to his body but made of divine sense, moved freely. He held his breath, focused, and used a finger as a brush to paint the bright fire formation patterns on the jet-black stele. Pale blue lines followed his finger nimbly, connecting thread by thread from simple to complex, forming mysterious patterns. After finishing the second pattern, Mo Hua felt unprecedented exhaustion and pain. It was like a dam in his sea of consciousness opened, letting divine sense flood out like a tide. The loss caused stinging pain and numbness on his scalp, and his thoughts slowed. His third pattern grew sluggish. Suddenly, sharp pain hit his sea of consciousness, causing Mo Hua to lose focus and make a mistake on the stele. He stopped, held his head, and waited for the pain to fade, which took as long as drinking a cup of tea. Reflecting, Mo Hua realized drawing formations required far more divine sense than other cultivation arts and more than he'd thought. He understood why the manual marked the warning in red ink. Insufficient cultivation and weak divine sense could cause severe depletion and even dry up divine sense. Such depletion brought intense pain and could damage or crack the sea of consciousness. Excessive cracking would shatter the sea of consciousness, killing the cultivator as their Tao vanished. This risk was mentioned by the formation instructor, but Mo Hua hadn't taken it seriously until now. The bright fire formation required the third chi refinement level, and Mo Hua, at the second, lacked enough divine sense. He lay on the ground of his sea of consciousness, holding his head and thinking. Though slightly lacking, his divine sense was stronger than most, and he had studied formation for a long time. With practice, he believed he could complete the formation. He resolved to try multiple times, gaining strength with each attempt and finishing more strokes until done. After reflecting, Mo Hua stood, erased the incomplete pattern on the stele, and let his divine sense recover. Though it felt like his first time drawing a formation, every stroke stayed clear in his mind. Mo Hua sighed inwardly, grateful the Taoist stele let him practice without fully draining his divine sense. Without it, he wouldn't know how long recovery would take before trying again. He feared mastering the bright fire formation might take 10 days to half a month, risking his spirit stones. Determined, Mo Hua focused his divine sense and began drawing the bright fire formation again. In the vast sea of consciousness, time slipped by unnoticed. Mo Hua alternated between drawing and resting, pausing whenever he couldn't continue. At his limit, he erased the formation and started over. After many tries, he finally finished it. He sighed deeply and collapsed, his divine sense completely drained like a salted fish. After resting for the time it took to drink half a cup of tea, he forced himself up and admired the formation he'd drawn for the first time. Yet as Mo Hua watched, the pale blue lines faded to dull gray. Stunned, Mo Hua gathered his resolve to examine each stroke carefully. He found multiple errors, extra strokes, wrong angles, and fused fire patterns. These mistakes used less divine sense, letting him finish the formation too soon. He scratched his head, noted the errors, erased the formation, and started again. After many tries, his head spun and his sea of consciousness ached and numbed. The patterns blurred and doubled, but through the dizziness, he completed the final stroke. Mo Hua's excitement surged, wiping away the exhaustion of the night. For the first time, he truly felt the power of a cultivator, the grasp of heavenly Tao's rules through formation painting and mastery of heaven and earth through his creation. Though a small step, it was the first drop flowing into the great river of the great Tao. He felt proud that, despite the bright fire formation's simplicity and common use for light, it had lit his first step on the path of Tao cultivation. Though eager to practice more, he knew his fragile divine sense was like a flickering candle and couldn't endure more strain without risking madness. He knew divine sense could recover, but the constant drain during formation painting was uncomfortable. This was his first formal formation drawing, but definitely not his last. He planned to practice the bright fire formation several times each night and, once skilled, use materials from the formation pavilion to draw it properly. When perfected, he would trade it for spirit stones, hoping to cover the sect's fees and ease his parents' burdens. He decided to call it a night. The bright fire formation on the Taoist stele glowed brilliantly as Mo Hua admired it one last time before reluctantly erasing it. The moment he erased it, his divine sense surged like tides and moon phases, instantly refilling his sea of consciousness. Standing before the Taoist stele with his divine sense restored, Mo Hua felt as if he had just entered the sea of consciousness hours ago. No matter how often he experienced this ebb and flow, it remained deeply mysterious, more profound than ever. He stared at the Taoist stele's black, profound surface, both void and all-encompassing, empty yet revealing everything. Transforming divine sense into formation patterns and back, existence and non-existence gave rise to and shaped each other. The next morning, after breakfast, Mo Hua returned to his room, took out paper and brush, and began carefully copying the bright fire formation stroke by stroke from memory. Using cheap ink and paper without spiritual energy, the formation was just a pattern with no effect, using only a little divine sense, so he didn't worry about wasting spirit stones if he failed. He copied the formation in one go, barely pausing thanks to the low divine sense cost. Afterward, he compared his copy to the formation diagram and found 3 mistakes. Setting the paper aside, he took a new sheet and kept drawing. After 3 sheets in a row, he finally produced a flawless bright fire formation diagram. Mo Hua sighed in relief, stretched lazily, and glanced at the small sundial on his table, realizing it was already noon. Only then did hunger hit. Lu Ruhua had prepared a meal of spirit rice, several stir-fried vegetables, and a single egg from a demon chicken. Though the spirit rice was low-grade, it was enough to satisfy his hunger. Mo Hua ate eagerly, then ran back to his room to continue practicing the bright fire formation. Watching him leave, Lu Ruhua worried Mo Hua was working too hard and had grown much thinner. Mo Shan nodded, agreeing hard work was good but fearing it might wear him out. He noted Mo Hua was born weak with a fragile foundation and shouldn't overexert himself. Lu Ruhua sighed, lamenting she hadn't inherited Mo Shan's talent for body refinement, but instead took after her frailty. Mo Shan gently embraced Lu Ruhua's slender shoulders and explained that when Mo Hua was born with weak blood qi, they consulted old Mr. Feng said that divine sense and body are balanced at birth, and since Mo Hua had strong divine sense, his body was weaker. Mo Shan pointed out that despite Mo Hua's frailty, no neighborhood child matched his intelligence. Mo Hua's cleverness and looks were credited to Lu Ruhua's care. Lu Ruhua smiled, appreciating Mo Shan's comforting words. Mo Shan mentioned his morning talk with old Zhou from the monster hunting team, who recently killed a fire chick. Though not a monster beast, its flesh held spiritual energy. Mo Shan bought some for Mo Hua, hoping it would nourish him. Lu Ruhua asked if they had enough spirit stones at home, but Emo Shan assured her that, as brothers who hunted together, their close bond let him pay after the new year. Lu Ruhua gave Emo Shan her storage bag, telling him to pay what he could and promising to repay the rest after the new year, since everyone needed spirit stones for the festivities. Emo Shan agreed. While Emo Shan and Lu Ruhua talked, Emo Hua focused on drawing the bright fire formation until evening, becoming quite skilled. At dinner, he ate quickly and rushed back to rest briefly before sleeping on schedule and entering his sea of consciousness. Inside the empty white space of his sea of consciousness stood the ancient stele. Emo Hua used his finger like a brush to formally draw the bright fire formation on the stele, pouring out his divine sense as the formation patterns slowly took shape. When his divine sense was nearly gone and barely held, he finished the formation, which glowed softly white. Though the bright fire formation is usually drawn by third-level Qi refinement cultivators, Emo Hua at second level completed a full diagram showing divine sense strength like higher-level cultivators. Proud, Emo Hua erased the formation to restore his divine sense and kept practicing through the night, repeatedly drawing and reflecting. Unconsciously, daylight came, and Emo Hua exited the sea of consciousness. Feeling no fatigue, he sat to meditate briefly, then after breakfast, carefully took out the formation materials from Fatty Steward. 10 small bottles of pale red ink made from fire attribute demon beast blood and spiritual liquid, and a crude pen Emo Hua chose not to use, preferring his own. He spread a sheet of formation paper on the table, poured ink into the inkstone, which preserved the spiritual power longer, and reviewed the bright fire formation patterns in his mind before officially drawing the formation. The process went smoother than expected. Aside from using real paper and ink, everything felt like drawing on the stone stele in the sea of consciousness, including divine sense use. Nervousness caused a few strokes to be slightly off, making the formation look a bit ugly but still effective. After using all his divine sense, Emo Hua finished the bright fire formation but found one mistake. Before mastering it, he had already lost a spirit stone, a loss he felt deeply. With divine sense drained, he closed his eyes to recover, wondering if there was a way to restore it quickly. He missed practicing on the Taoist Stele, but it wasn't available in reality. As he rested, morning passed, and Lu Ruhua called him for lunch. He ate quickly and returned to his room, spreading out another sheet of formation paper. Staring at the blank page, Emo Hua calmed himself and reviewed his experiences. He quietly repeated, "Failure is the mother of success," and began drawing the second bright fire formation. This time, he was more focused, carefully considering each stroke and visualizing the next patterns. When his divine sense was drained again, he closed his eyes to rest but kept the formation diagram in his mind. Emo Hua drew slowly, and time passed quickly. By dusk, despite slow progress, he finally completed the bright fire formation. Tired but excited, he collapsed onto the bed and soon fell into a soft snore. When he woke, it was dark and hunger gnawed at him. Following a tempting aroma into the hall, he found a large bowl of meat waiting on the table.